Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Sippin with Shawn. Today I have an interview with author Jay Hall, who wrote a book that's basically for young adults who are raising children in today's society. And I had a great conversation with him where it was talking about his beliefs in like Christianity and how it ties into his book and how he raises kids. And when he's raised 4 kids, mind you, and now he just became a grandfather as well. So the guy's got a ton of parenting experience, and a lot of the insight that he kind of like gives to the book is really it's really interesting. So I really recommend you guys enjoy this episode. I recommend you enjoy this episode. Just enjoy the episode. And also, as you can see, I made some beverages here, and this is going to be part of the drink of the week. But there's a couple of things I have to get to as well, which would be our sponsor, Nature Clear, where you can go and you can get, from what I understand, if you go and you get a subscription to recurring orders, you will save 15% on your orders. And then if you use our promo code, which is Sippin, SIPPIN, for Sippin with Shawn, you will save the shipping and handling as well. So it'll be like another $5 off of your bill as well. So if you go and do that, and it's great stuff. I swear to you, I've been using this stuff maybe like 2 or 3 times throughout the week, and you know, it rehydrates you, especially after a night of drinking and whatnot. Like, it's there to like helps your A1C levels. If you're unfamiliar with what A1C is, if you ever have gotten like a blood panel taken from like a blood test or whatever like that, your A1C is essentially your blood sugar, which relates to diabetes and things like that as well. So it helps lower that as well in your blood sugar, which is fantastic. And yeah, again, it's like a liquid IV type thing, so like it's meant to get rid of the symptoms of hangovers and stuff like that. So there's lots of testimonials on the website. You can go to natureclear.com, and if you use the promo code Sippin, you're going to save yourself some shipping and handling. And if you get a subscription through their order, you're also going to save yourself 15% on your order every time. So there's that. And then let's also not forget to go over to Locals and support the network. So you can go to tdpn.locals.com, and you can use promo code TDPN, and you can get a free month subscription to all of our exclusive content that we're putting out. Ian and I have been on the phone constantly working out all the details as to what exactly it is that we're going to be doing for exclusive content. Between live streams, there's going to be this like chain letter script reading thing that we're creating with Movies America, and then there's going to be a lot of other blog posts as well that we're creating. That's going to strictly be for supporters only. Like, if you're a member, you can go and join for free, but for the minimum of $3 a month, you can go and you can sign up and become a member over there as well. So that's what, $36 for the year. Really not that bad. And then on top of that, we're going to give you a free month when you use promo code TDPN. So it's only $33 a month. Or I'm sorry, $33 for the year. So make sure you go over there, support the network, support all the shows that we got going on over there. You can go and see all of my links that are affiliated with Sippin with Shawn over at solo.to /imshawncav, where it has all my socials for my Twitter and my own Locals page and my Rumble page for all my music stuff that I'm doing as well, besides everything that I'm also doing with the podcast stuff, where it's going to be all Sippin with Shawn, the Whiskey Capitalist. But everything is located in there at solo.to /imshawncav. And I already mentioned before, there's going to be some merch coming out pretty soon for the TDPN network, and there's going to be some Sippin with Shawn merch coming up very soon. So you're going to want to check that out as well, because I get a kickback from that as well. So with all that, let's go over to the interview, and then after that we will do maybe we'll do the drink a week first, and then we'll go to the interview. Either way, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. It's going to be a fun episode. Bye-bye. Okay, everybody, so for the drink of the week today, I don't even have a name for this thing. We haven't talked about a name. I found this recipe online, and it just sounded really good. So I figured this might be like the perfect time to kind of like try this cocktail out, and maybe you guys will come up with a name for it. I don't know, but like leave it in the comments or anything like that, and we'll try and piece something together with this. But I have a recipe that I'm going to be following, and it's made for like large batches, so I'm going to be like condensing it all. Again, inexperienced bartender, but I'm going to be trying to turn it into a decent cocktail for me and my wife, because she's helping me hold the camera right now and film this. So, to start, what we are going to need is, we're going to first need a shaker. You need to shake this one. So, put a little bit of ice in there just for the chilling effect. I do have a cup of ice over here for the glasses themselves. So, and for those, I'm going to use maker's glasses as well. So, I'm just going to have these guys sitting over here for right now, out of the way. Don't need to bother with those. The main ingredients for this are going to be apple juice, just 100% pure apple juice, nothing crazy about that. And then vodka, of course, you know, and again, just I buy Tito's by the jug because the stuff's delicious. Other ingredients that you definitely have around the house to make this is going to be lemon juice. So you can get that. You can also get some maple syrup, which I think there you go. There's the Aunt Jemima. There she is.
Butterworth.
Miss Butterworth. Oh, it's still like a black lady, right? It's black lady syrup, so that works. So any black lady syrup that you want to get, and then you want to get some ground cinnamon, and that's all the ingredients you're gonna need for this. It sounds like a lot because like, you know, typically, like, you know, for guys, we're very utilitarian when it comes to making drinks. We just want to have, like, booze and ice, or we want to have, like, booze, one mixer with ice. It's very, very straightforward and simple. We don't want to spend a lot of time making these types of drinks. But when you're hosting at home, or you want to, like, impress somebody else, you want to give them something special, maybe you try and master a cocktail like this. Now, again, me, not a master. I am very much the inexperienced bartender, but I'm willing to try, and we're going to give this a go, and then me and my wife are going to try this thing out, and we're going to see how much I suck at it. So, to start off, you are going to need 2 to 1 parts for vodka and apple juice. So 2 parts of apple juice to 1 part vodka. Now, it says, like, you know, there's cup ratios and this and that, but we're going off of this. This is essentially the amount that we have to create. So we want to try and, like, balance this out. So we're going to go apple juice, basically, like, maybe, like, right around there with the apple juice. Maybe we'll add more if like, we need to. But I'm just going to go with that for right now. And then we're going to go maybe up to, like, here now with vodka to kind of give it that 2 to 1 ratio. Maybe add a little bit more apple juice. I'm just a little nervous. That was a lot of vodka. There you go. All right. So now we have the apple juice and the vodka. The next thing we're going to do is I think I have my measuring spoons down here. Or if not, we're going to be eyeballing it. Yeah, looks like we're eyeballing it, everybody. So we are going. It says about essentially like 2 tablespoons and 2 teaspoons if you're doing like this big batch. But for this, we're going to add a decent squeeze of lemon juice. Some maybe around that. Almost gone, but we got enough. Probably if this does turn out decent, we'll do another round of this. And then about the same type of a squeeze for some maple syrup. Alright, not too much, but just enough to make it sweet. Balance out the sour, I hope. And then, finally, the final thing we're going to do is a little dash of cinnamon in this. So, come on. There we go. That's a little bit of cinnamon. Now, we're going to put the lid on, and it says to shake thoroughly. So, here we go. Here's my bar flare. Okay. So this is what we've got right here. If you want to pull into that, it's a little cloudy, but I'm thinking it's not looking too bad. I'm gonna grab a couple of ice cubes here, and ooh, that's my wife's ice cube, and then just gonna pour this guy out, and then we're gonna figure out if maybe a name will just come to me, like, oh,
come to Butthead.
You know what this is? Let's find out. So, cheers, guys. Sweet. That is really good. I'm thoroughly impressed with my own skills, and this is I would say this is like a good fall drink. for sure. But I mean, like we're kind of. Oh, yeah, oh no, my wife wants a sip. There, here you go. I don't know. I want to call that one like a spiked apple cider or something like that. Like that's
It's a lot
yummy.
of apple picking.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So again, like this is kind of like it feels like a fall kind of thing, but we are in that weird transition right now of winter into spring. Or at least up here in the Northeast, we are. So like it kind of feels a little fall-ish right now. So like this drink kind of fits the whole scheme of like the season right now for sure. So I don't know. This is pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with myself with this.
I would date the hell out of me.
Thanks, guys, and cheers. So let's kick off the interview type deal. And really, I just want to kind of get to know your book too as well, because like that's what you're here promoting as well. So
Yeah.
I'm here with Jay Hall, and you're an author. You wrote the book God Help Me, I'm a Young Dad, 10 Essentials for Becoming a Dad for Kids, for Kids' Needs. Right?
Yeah.
That's the full title. Okay. And sorry, yeah, it's like I was getting the subtitle
There's
in
a
there
lot
as well.
getting it. Yeah, there's a lot to it.
But I really liked you gave me a little write up when we first talked about like the application, the inspiration, and like just like again essentially just all of the breakdown of all of how it works together and whatnot. And I thought it was pretty cool because like not only that, you have like a pretty extensive background. So you want to introduce yourself a little bit, give everybody a little background.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, Shawn, really excited to be here hanging out and talking with you. So I appreciate the chance to come on and talk about the book a little bit. I am a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a grandfather now. That just happened a couple of weeks ago, so we're pretty fired up about that. I'm a lifelong educator. My career's been in education, first starting in ministry context in the church, and then went back, got a Ph.D., and now work in higher education as a teacher and an administrator. But I'm also a podcaster. I host a show called the Okie Bookcast, and now an author. This is my first book, something I've wanted to do for a long time and just didn't have the time and honestly didn't have the inspiration to put something completely together. So this is the first one that made it all the way from idea to actual book in people's hands. Yeah, but I lifelong love to read, love to learn, love to just kind of put thoughts out. And so this book was an opportunity to kind of bring all of that together. So that's kind of the basics of me. I guess any specific questions I'm happy to talk about.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, and congratulations on becoming a grandfather.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
pretty amazing. Yeah, I mean, like I'm a father of two myself. But like mine are still very young.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so like because you have four, so like you've seen you've gone through the ropes already. You've seen it all, or at least most of it. For me, like I have my 5-year-old's going to be turning 6 this month, and then my
awesome
my 2-year-old's going to be turning 3 in May. So yeah, I'm right at that cusp.
Oh,
yeah. It's a great age. So much fun.
Yeah.
I just took them to Medieval Times this past weekend just to
Nice.
kind of like, and again, just the perfect ages for all, because my boy is just turning 3 and he's just like super into like the knights and all that. My daughter loves
horses
the
and
horses.
swords, man.
Yeah, can't go wrong. Awesome. But yeah, so just kind of like I guess we'll get into some of the book, because this is your first time writing a book. I felt that was pretty awesome, because I think a lot of us always had like the inspiration to kind of want to write, but like don't really know where to get started a lot of times when it comes out. Like what was like the triggering moment for you that you're like, you know what, I need to get these thoughts down, and I need to just like, I have to just do this. I have to write it out.
So in September, when we found out that my son and daughter-in-law were going to have a baby, I started thinking about all the things that I hoped I had taught him. Not just like overtly, hey, let's sit down and talk about this, but the things that I'd modeled and that I had been as his dad. And we're kind of a letter writing family. We've got a history of, just different times in life, lots of letters getting written. And so I thought, okay, I'll write some of this down and then share it with him that way. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought about lots of other young dads that I know, like you, Shawn, who have kids that are, in that 10 to 12-year-old or younger range, who are just trying to figure it out. And I thought, man, if this stuff is going to be good for my son, then maybe it's going to be good for everybody. And so over the fall, I just kind of kicked around, thought about it. On December 28th, I remember this date, I walked out for the first time and went and sat down and said, okay, I'm going to see if I can just write a chapter and put this together in the way that it's kind of working in my head. And from December 28th to February 7th, knocked it out, and then was able to turn around and get it out. So I think to answer the question of what was it that finally made this happen, I finally had a complete idea of where I wanted to go. And I had the ticking clock of my grandson was supposed to be born on March 17th. He came 2.5 weeks early. So he kind of jumped the gun on the book. But uh, I knew that date was coming, and I wanted to have this done for my son before my grandson was here. So for the first time, I had that. This is when it has to be done. I can't just kind of keep thinking about it and messing with it, whatever. I have to ship. And that turned into a book.
Sure. And now with your approach to the parenting and whatnot as well, because like your background, you mentioned to me that you had degrees in theology and
Mhm.
also sociology as well.
Yeah.
So like, I thought that was another interesting take because you said you're like, oh, I argue with myself constantly about things. I'm like, yeah, all right, that's pretty smart. I appreciate that. And like, so are you kind of like more when you feel like you're parenting? Do you feel like you're kind of coming from more like a Christian standpoint of like this is morality, I'm teaching you moral reasoning versus like, well, this is societal norms and like this is what should be accepted?
I think the beauty of my 2 degrees, although it does cause me to argue with myself sometimes about things, is that it allows me to think about both of those at the same time.
Mhm,
Um, so I don't tend to think now. I didn't mention this. My kids are obviously quite a bit older than yours: 26, 24, 21, and 18. My
mhm,
seniors getting ready to graduate from high school. Um, so growing up with them, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking in terms of I'm teaching them morality or I'm teaching them. My goal was to help them become the kind of people that I felt like God wanted them to be. And
mhm,
so the theology part of that was just me thinking about what does the world look like, um, what is our role in it, and then helping them navigate the challenges that come at 5 years old and at 15 years old and at 25 years old from that perspective. So the sociology allows me to look at the world. The theology then allows me to think about and help them think about this is who God would have us to be in the midst of a world that sees things this way, or in the midst of a high school classroom where all of your peers are cheating and you could too. But what does it look like, and what does it mean for you to choose to not? And how do we navigate and walk through some of that? So um, you know, I honestly don't know how much of what I taught my kids was intentional versus just what I hoped I modeled and we talked about, or as we went, these things came up and we had the opportunity to talk and think about them.
mm. Yeah, no, it's a great point. Like I kind of like think back like how like I was parented and whatnot, and I try to always think like, all right, am I up to that standard? Am I doing like the best that I can? Like, am I like, because I know I turned out decent, but I want to make sure that my kids turn out like,
Right.
better. I want them to like do better than I did, especially like seeing the mistakes that I made earlier on in life and whatnot. It's like, just please don't glance over this. Like, this is an important part of your life, because like for me, like I didn't really care about high school and things like that,
Right.
and like that's such a pivotal moment with trying to like again like kind of find yourself and then also shape you into what type of path you're going to take like through your 20s and whatnot. Like, are you going to be playing catch up to everybody else, or are you going to be like
Yeah.
out in front? Are you going to be a front runner when it comes to like career path or anything like that, or just even having the drive to like form your own path, and stuff like that. So like I don't know, there's lots of different ways for everybody to go, and like there's, I guess there's no real right answer when it comes to that because every kid's different. But like
Right.
I find that interesting nonetheless, because for me, like growing up, I went to church like all the time. Like it was like a regular kind of like Sunday thing, you go to church. But I find myself now, like I was a musician for a church band for a long time, so I
Mhm.
still was part of like a church community for a while as like a staff member and this and that. But like I just didn't see like a lot of the value in like what the church was providing for the children in like a community sense. So like for me, I felt it was better for like a maybe like a more social environment when it came to the kids, because there wasn't very many children at that church either. So it's like, what are they really getting out of this? You know, is there anything really for them besides like the moral lessons? But are they even absorbing the moral lessons there? Like, can I teach it to them in another way? My daughter just recently became curious about the Bible, and I started like a children's Bible. I would just like read like the short stories out of that, and like I would, you know, you sit there and you explain the morality of it, and I if you can, I guess, like relate to that type of stuff. So do you find yourself like with your own like messages and stuff like that in there, like, are you trying to relate any of these like real simple kind of things, like don't steal, don't covet, like, you know, like your 10 commandment type deal, like is that more or less like your guidelines, or is that just like something that you've ingrained into like your helpful steps, or your helpful guide?
I think we have grossly overcomplicated what a life of faith looks like.
Mm,
And I try to talk about it in the book. When I was in seminary many years ago, I had a preaching professor. His name was Calvin Miller, also a writer, written some really cool and incredible, even like science fiction stuff. And the one thing that I remember from Calvin is the goal is to put the cookies on the low shelf. We can get so hung up on all the ologies and the big theological ideas that people like to sit around and debate. But at the end of the day, when you think about what the Bible says, in Micah, it says, what does God want from you? He wants you to act justly, he wants you to love mercy, and he wants you to walk humbly with him. Right. And so then all the other stuff that is a part of our lives that we stress about and try to figure out, and we argue about, this doctrine versus this doctrine, not that that's not important. We need to figure that kind of stuff out. But most of our lives really are set in these very simple things, right? That we're supposed to be good to people. We're supposed to be loving. We're supposed to be kind. We're supposed to be generous. We're supposed to be compassionate and forgiving. So, to circle back to the book, as I was thinking about the things that I wanted to tell young dads, work on becoming this and helping model it for your kids, those were the things I wanted to come back to. So, the titles of all the chapters are just these very simple ideas of joy and compassion and forgiveness and love and presence.
mhm.
And there's lots. I mean, you can get pretty deep theologically into any of those if you want to, but you don't have to. And I think when we get lost in the church sometimes is when we get hung up in those arguments, or we feel like those arguments are the thing that is the most important. And if not everybody gets it with us, then man, we're not sure if we can hang out with them. So for kids, and I mean, even my kids in their 20s, they're not all that. I'm gonna be careful how I say this because I don't want to say anything bad about them. They're not deep theological thinkers, but they
Okay.
are amazing people of faith in their worlds. Maybe because they're not deep theological thinkers, because they look at it from a very not simplistic, but simple perspective that I should be loving, so I'm going to go love, right? And I should be forgiving, and so I'm going to go forgive. And I don't need to figure out how all of the behind the scenes doctrinal stuff works. I just know that God's called me to be this, so I'm going to go be this, and then we'll figure the theology out as we go.
Yeah, almost like a good standard of morality. You know, like that's more or less what you're getting at. Just like you don't necessarily have to go to church. You don't have to have a like a deep relationship essentially with like the church or anything like that. More or less, just understand like morality. Understand, like, you know, to be a good person, and like, all those all the good things that go along with that.
Well, I want to be careful because I think the church is important. I
Okay.
think participating in the local community is a significant part of our life of faith,
Hmm.
because it gives us an opportunity to be around people who share a common vision, and that's where we learn. I mean, again, I even though I don't know that the really deep things are the most significant thing all the time, there is a place for that, and we do need to be growing. We do need to be learning, and in the book, again, I talk about some of this stuff. We get to enact it in the context of a faith community. So when you think about what generosity looks like or what compassion looks like, a lot of those opportunities come because we are interacting with lots of different kinds of people in the context of the church, or there's ministry opportunities that come out of a relationship. So I want to be careful with this idea of if we're just good, that gets it,
Hmm.
because I think the Bible pretty clearly states that we're called to a different kind of life, and that life is seated in a relationship with God. So I think that looks different for
Hmm.
different people, and I'm not going to get into, if you don't do this, and this, then all that doctrinal stuff gets a little bit complicated. But I do believe that a life of faith is seated in a relationship with God through His Son Jesus, and that's again kind of the underpinning of the book. In fact, at the beginning, after kind of the introduction, I spend a couple of pages just explaining, this is my context. This is how I understand the world, and the book's going to be written from that context. Now, you may not agree with all this, and that's your call. And I think even if you don't have a life of faith, love still matters, right? Joy
Yeah.
still matters. Compassion still matters. Forgiveness still matters. So I think there's things that people can get even if they don't connect with what I believe in terms of faith and Christianity. And so that's where you get into some of that general morality, being a good person. I think there's something that people from that perspective can gain from the book. But for me, and for the way that I've raised my kids, it's seated in that life of faith, relationship with God through Jesus, that expresses itself in Christian community and in lots of other ways as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I can attest to that. Like, I think that you hit a pretty good mark right there. Where you're talking about the fact that, like, the church is a good place for community. It's a great sense of community. That's what I mostly got out of going to church on a regular
Sure.
basis, was like getting to know your neighbors, getting to have like build those relationships and whatnot. Because then like you're not at it alone. I feel like in your
Yeah.
neighborhood, there's a lot. You have a support system essentially that's there, which is great. So, now you did mention before you would be interested in maybe going into some like how this might like even apply to like today, with how kids are growing up, because like with your book, because as you know, the world is just like, it seems like it's on fire anymore. Like every other day, something is going on, and there's people out there saying like they're, how could you bring children into this world type deal, and they don't seem to understand the joy and love that happens when you have kids and like having them like in like the house, the simplistic things that like it means so much throughout the day, like just like goofy little things, like if your
Oh
son comes
yeah.
up and tries to wrestle you and whatnot, like that's something that'll stick with you all day long, like, and it's just something goofy, but like they're not experiencing that, if they don't have that like, experience at home, like with like their own kids and stuff like that or whatever, or if they don't even have like aunts, nieces and nephews, like that's another way to try and like experience that as well. But for I can just think like with my own kids, like I just don't know how their life experience is going to be growing up compared to mine, because I didn't have these types of hurdles that they're experiencing in the schools and just like socially today than when I grew up. Like, it's totally different.
Yeah, it's the world gets more complicated, right? And of course, you and I are not in the same generation. I'm a little bit older than you are. We'll just be kind
Just
and leave
just
it
a
there.
little bit, yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Uh, but when I went to school, we didn't have any of the things. There were lots of issues, right?
Mhm.
I grew up elementary school in the '70s and then junior high school in the '80s. Um, but we didn't have the internet in the same way. We didn't have social media. We didn't have phones. We didn't have all this kind of stuff that's a part of the lives of kids now. So there was lots of bad stuff going on, but we didn't know about it for the most part because we didn't have it right there in front of us all the time.
Mhm.
So I think to the question of how can you bring kids into the world like this, and I think kids are the hope for a world like this.
Mhm.
As we do what we can to help teach them how to navigate it. And I've said that if my kids want to, they could run the place because they know how to interact with adults and they know how to have conversations and they know how to think critically and they know how to evaluate information so that they don't just believe everything that comes at them. And that's more and more rare because we haven't we've given up, I think, some of the opportunity to teach some of that because
Mhm.
as the world gets more and more divided, we tend to kind of barricade ourselves behind whatever wall we've created of our beliefs and don't look out beyond that because that feels dangerous or scary or problematic. And I think there's a different conversation with a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old talking
Yes.
about some of the things going on in the world. But I do think the ability to look out there and see what's going on helps us better navigate it, helps our kids better navigate it. And what better time to do that than when they're with us? I
Mhm.
would much rather my kids be asking me really, really hard questions about why is the world like this? Why does this person think this way? Why did this kind of thing happen? Than for them to to not have those conversations and then release them into the wild without the ability really to think about it.
Or
Um,
have somebody that you don't even know trying to
right,
teach them,
right.
like, what their sense of morality is over these topics. Like,
Yeah.
that's a scary thing.
Yeah, and I think the goal of, of our goal as parents, our task as parents is largely to help them understand what the values are, and then how do you apply those? I mean, it goes back to what I was saying, that there are some very basic and simple things that we can apply universally. Like love is universal, right? It might look different in different contexts, but at the end of the day, that's a significant value that we can apply all over the place all the time. Gratitude is universal. We can apply that all the time. So how do we instill in our kids that these are the things that matter, and then you look at context and figure out how they connect, rather than I don't know that I have a set of values, and so this stuff happens and I kind of just have to go with it or figure it out on my own because I don't have a framework and underpinning to work from.
Mm, I
And that
see.
feels like a really daunting thing, like to
Mhm.
teach kids. I'm not sure it's as hard as we make it out to be. I think so much of it is, Shawn, you have a set of values that you live your life by, whether you've articulated those or not, right?
Mhm.
I have a set of values that I live my life by. Just so happens that I had the opportunity to articulate a lot of them. But our kids see that, and they watch how we interact with people. They watch how we treat them. We watch how we treat their mom, or our neighbors, or the people that we work with. They listen to the way we talk about people, and so I think a lot of what we teach is not intentional, right? It's not sitting down and saying, this is the way the world is, or this is what we believe. It's them watching us live it out and then answering the questions when they come, or sometimes explaining, this is why we do this, right? People like us do things like this. Seth Godin always says it all the time. Um, to explain the behaviors, or explain, okay, well, why are we getting up early on Sunday morning to go do this thing? Or why are we spending time on a Saturday afternoon to go work at this shelter? Because I'd rather be playing video games, or I'd rather be doing something else. And that's when we have the opportunity to explain, this is who we are. But
Mhm.
seeing us do that and live that out, I think I think it's more important than the things that we tell them, because I mean, you and I have both had things told to us that we're like, okay, whatever. But watching
Right.
that happen from people that we respect changes our perspective.
No, absolutely. I think the key thing right there is that it's like very passive learning, like as you're talking about right there, or it's like just
Yeah.
experiencing what an elder or a parent is doing. Just seeing that sometimes can shape you into like, oh well, this is the right thing to do. This is like, what they were doing. This is how they treat other people and this and that. And like I definitely got like my father's work ethic. He was a workaholic type
Yeah.
deal. So just always go, go, go. And like that's kind of like the things that like people I feel like aren't getting today. A lot of times they're not getting those same elements of like like the passive education when it comes to things, because I feel like whether it's young parents or what it is, essentially there's not a lot of effort going into just being there present in the moment, and maybe letting like the tablet teach the kids versus like
Hmm.
you taking the time to sit down and like explain something. Yeah, it's a pain sometimes, and so it can be like annoying, but like I usually feel a little bit better if after I do something like that, and if
Yeah.
they got something out of it. Oh my god, if they got something out of like a story I told, or just trying to teach them like a lesson, I feel amazing. Like I remember I just was walking around the house like I was just annoyed that like every single light on was in the house. I'm just going around. So I just explained to my daughter quick, like, we're saving the planet if you just turn out the lights. And that became
Yeah.
like her like mission in life at this point. Like, you gotta turn the light out. Like she would like race up behind people, just like, thank you. You're saving the electric bill more than the planet, but I appreciate that.
Right. Either way,
Yeah.
believe what you need to believe. It works.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, yeah, I kind of misled her a little bit with that one, but you know what? I'll still go with it.
Well, and you're setting an example of, this is a thing that matters. So even if flipping the light switch off might not by itself make a huge
Mhm.
difference, you're establishing that value, right? That it matters how we use energy, and it matters that we are thinking about what our impact is, and that moves beyond just light switches. Now, I think you said she was 4 or 5 years old, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
may not
She's
move
five.
far beyond light switches right now, but down the road that becomes, just kind of part of what she's internalized from you.
Mhm.
I talk about the last chapter in the book actually is about presence, is just, that this stuff really only works if we are embodying it in the lives of our kids as we're walking with them.
Mhm.
But man, we live in a world that really makes presence complicated. The expectations on dads, you got to be working 40 or 50 hours a week, and then you should probably be working out 2 or 3 hours a day so that you make it to see your kids graduate from high school. I've heard things like that just really are gross, but get
Yeah.
said. And work looks different, and so sometimes you got to be gone for a week at a time, this kind of thing. And then when you're home, there's 5 TVs, and everybody's got a screen, and there's massive amounts of homework to get. I mean, just all these things that are a part of our lives make presence really complicated. So the intentionality of that is to me, it's a linchpin in all of this, that if the things that we want to be true in the lives of our kids, the things that we want to help teach them, we can't abdicate time. And I try to be really careful when I talk about it, because I recognize that sometimes we have to work 40, 50, 60 hours to be able to provide for our kids, and that's important too. But
Mhm.
a lot of the stuff that we do that takes up time may not be as significant. And so I think sometimes there's that evaluation of the trade-off, right? So, okay, my son might not be on the 40-hour a week baseball team, so that they may not play, you know, small college baseball someday, but we're going to go fishing, or
Mhm.
we're going to, be together to do this thing, whatever it is. And those are hard conversations. Those are hard trade-offs to make, because we are surrounded by people who might be making different decisions. And so we feel this pressure to justify, well, this is why our family doesn't do this, instead of just saying, you know what, this is who we are. And this is
Right.
the choice we've made for our kids, this choice we made for our family. And hey, go do your thing, and that's great, good for you. But this is who we've chosen to be.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I learned that really early on, being a musician and having
Oh
young
yeah.
kids in the house and
Yeah.
whatnot. It's like my schedule was very, very different. I would be traveling a lot, and it would just be a very different standard of living than others would be used to, because like the house is kind of noisy at times, and it's like, but the kids just have to grow up in that environment. Like this is what our normal is. This is like what we're experiencing like on a day-to-day basis. So like
Yeah.
it's not everyone's normal, but this is what we're dealing with, and then things change, like it's when career paths change and stuff like that, you adjust and you adapt and whatnot. So like, I feel like the presence thing is probably like the biggest part for me as a parent. Like, I feel like just being there means
Yeah.
more than like I heard this before I even had kids, and I thought this was a great line too. It's like I believe in a quantity over a quality, where it's like you just being there doesn't matter if like you're doing something like amazingly fancy or
Right.
cool.
Right.
Like it's just like if you're just hanging out together, that means more than like, all right, well, I took you on a fancy trip, I'm gonna go and
Yeah.
like work now for the next 3 weeks, and I'll see you when I come
Yeah.
out of the hole, like.
No, in fact, the last words of my book are keep showing up, right?
Yeah,
That
that's great.
just keep showing up, because to me, and I think you said it really well. There's a lot of pressure to do things that are perceived as high value, right?
Mhm.
But we establish the ability for our kids to have conversations with us because we're around. And I've got an awesome dad, but he worked really, really hard. He was in the car business in the '80s, which meant he left the house at 7 in the morning. He might get home at midnight, and so we didn't see him a ton. But that's what he felt like he had to do for our family, and I'm thankful for the work ethic he taught me.
Mhm.
But the flip side of that was that there were hard conversations sometimes that I needed to have with somebody, and I didn't feel like I knew him well enough to do that. And to take nothing away from him, but that's part of why I just want to be around, because I want my kids to have me as a familiar presence in their lives, so that when the weird thing happens at school, or somebody says something about them, or they get their heart broken, or they don't make the team, that they are able to come and have that conversation with me, because I'm just there, right? And
Mhm.
it's not like I got to introduce myself and kind of figure out who we are in this conversation and then have the conversation. It's, well, there's dad, and let's go talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. So, let's switch a little bit here and talk about your podcast as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
Is the Okie Bookcast?
Yep. So yeah, the Okie Bookcast been around for about a year and a half now, which is crazy that it's been going that long. I looked up, thought, man, when did that happen? Um, so it's we do a couple of different things on the podcast. One is so I live in Oklahoma. That's the Okie part of that,
Mhm.
and am just really interested in kind of the literary life of our state. And I know lots of people think about Oklahoma, and the first thing they think about isn't literary stuff. But believe it or not, we have a lot of fantastic authors and other bookish things that are part of our state. So the big part of the show is just interviewing authors, booksellers, librarians, publishers, all the different people that are connected to what I call the bookish life of Oklahoma, to help listeners connect with books that they're going to love. And it's always fun for me to I run into people, talk to people in different places, social media, who have picked up books that they heard the author on the show. It's the first time they'd ever heard of them, but then enjoyed the book and found two or three others, and they've shared it with lots of other people. So that's a really exciting part of it, is just to get to meet those folks and be a part of that world. And then in August, I started working with my daughter, my older daughter, who is also an author and screenwriter and has done some other things. And we do a book chat show where the two of us get together, usually with a guest, and just talk about what we're reading.
Mhm.
Not necessarily Oklahoma books, although those come up a lot, but just talk about what we're reading, why we like it, who we think might like what we're reading and checking out. And that's been really popular. And in fact, I went this weekend to interview a bookseller here in Oklahoma, and when I walked in by myself, she was actually disappointed that Hannah didn't come with me. It's like,
Ah,
oh, your daughter's not coming. I was like, great, she's the star now. I get it. This is what's happened.
yep. That's what happens,
It
man.
listen, it and good on her. You know, I'd rather listen to her than me talk too. So I get that. Um, but yeah, it's called the Okie Bookcast. You can find it all the places where you listen to podcasts, and then I'm all across social media, and it's just at Okie Bookcast, OKIE,
Mhm.
and then BOOKCAST.
Yeah, I think I have you up here. I could probably pull up your Twitter page so people can
Oh,
see
cool.
it.
Yeah, very
We'll
cool.
do it. There you go. And wait, there it is. Boom, there you
That's
go.
me. That's me.
Yeah, it's the Okie Bookcast, just like right there.
Yeah,
Perfect.
very cool.
Yeah, and let's see here. Yeah, I was gonna say like, oh, if you want to blast some like socials and stuff like that or whatever you want to like, but you mentioned like you're on Twitter. Like, is there other ways people can get in touch with you or?
Yeah, so on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I took a shot at TikTok and realized I was too old to really care very much about it, and so that's not happened very much. But and it's all the same handle at Okie Bookcast. The website is okiebookcast.com. I'm
Mhm.
working on an author website that's not quite ready yet, but it'll be connected from all my socials and from the Okie Bookcast site once it's done. That'll be jhallwrites.com. But again, if you go there right now, you won't see anything because it's not ready. Yeah.
And I do have
So
this. I have this I can pull up as well, where like it's your link for your book
yes,
over on
thank you.
Amazon.
Yeah.
So 9.99 paperback right there, and I guess it's also in Kindle form as well. So
Yep. So you can get it for Kindle for $5.99, paperback for $9.99. It's only been out a week. It actually launched. That says March 11th. Launched a week ago, and response has been great. Really excited to just hear from. What's interesting is not just dads, right? So the book is written for young fathers,
mhm.
but I've heard from grandparents and I've heard from moms who got it for their husbands and then started reading it themselves. That there's a lot in it that applies to everybody, because again, the basics of these things, I keep saying it, love and compassion and forgiveness, that's stuff we can all learn. And then the application part of it that you mentioned at the beginning is, okay, dads, this is what it could look like in your life, but this is also what it can look like around the table. This is what it can look like at bedtime. This is what it can look like in the community or when you're driving home from baseball practice, right? Here's all the different ways this can apply. So it's been kind of fun to put this thing out in the world that I really wanted to focus on young dads, but I'm finding out that lots of other people are enjoying it and getting benefit from it too.
That's great. Yeah, you've sold it on me. I'm
Good.
picking up a copy. So
Outstanding.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of read this one because I mean, like, yeah, like, it has all those benefits to like how to make this all work in a regular, like modern life. Like how we're gonna raise kids in today's society. Which honestly, it's one of the most uh, mind uh, mind bending things to try and like think about, like how the hell I'm gonna like get them through the hurdles that, like, I remember high school being like a real pain growing up, but like it's got to be even worse now, like, with everything else
Yes.
that they have going on, social pressures, social media alone. Like social media is the one thing where it's like if I can help them avoid that the longest, as long as possible, I will. I'll think of myself as a success if I'm able to get them to avoid it for like, if I can get them to avoid it all the way to like 17, I'll be like, oh, I did good. Because I see some kids with like phones and whatnot, and like they're like 12, 13 years old, and like they're already on social media. Like
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, I could never get behind something like that as a parent. And it's just because I know the dangers of social media,
Right.
and I see like there's a lot of sketchy things that could happen, and like young kids aren't thinking about all that type of stuff because they haven't experienced it, they haven't seen it, they haven't heard
Right.
about it. And they're not asking those questions to the parents either. So it's like, it's almost like the authoritarian kind of like approach where it's like, no, you're not gonna have this at all. Like, I'm going to control this until I feel you're ready, at least. And like I know there's workarounds with like simple phones, and I don't know how it worked out with me and my wife, but like, I found her just like we met at a bar or whatever like that, but she was never on any kind of social media, like
Oh, wow.
nothing like that. So like she was one of those people that just like never got into that stuff until like, she was probably like 24 or some of that when she finally made a Facebook page, like, so
Yeah.
like, she avoided it from like, all like the early years and stuff like that. And then it was until like I said, mid 20s where she finally found social media and started promoting her own businesses and stuff like that as
Right.
well. But
Sure.
still, it's like not something. It's mostly just like family photos and just like work related things. So it's not like an oversharing type deal either.
Right.
So, and I think that's another lesson to kind of like take into factor. It's like, what's a good amount of sharing versus like what's
Oh,
too
yeah.
much, and that's I think I'm helping you write your second book right now. Like you
It's funny. The next book is actually for college students, and there's going to be a lot of those kinds of things. Is just trying to understand how to navigate the world the way it's set up. But I will tell you, and hopefully this is encouraging as your kids move forward. I think the best thing we can do is help kids understand who they are
Mhm,
and understand just I think so much healthy relationship comes from being confident in who we are, right? And so if they understand these are my values, this is how I view the world, then when that stuff comes, they get to choose whether or not to accept or reject it. So
mhm,
you talk about your wife not being on social media. Neither of my sons care anything about it. My
mhm,
older son's 26. He's never had a social media account. My younger son is 21, and he has it just to kind of mess around and send pictures of
yeah,
work and things like that. My daughters are both more involved, but are like you talked about. They have healthy relationships. My older daughter, it's basically pictures of her dogs. My younger daughter, it's just well, it's sharing everything related to Taylor Swift, but in healthy ways, I guess,
mhm.
as healthy as that can be. But there's not, there's not the other things that you look at and go, oh gosh, I hope my kids don't get involved with that, because by the time they were engaging with social media, they understood, at least to the extent that you could at whatever age, this is who I am, right? This is what matters. These are my values. And so I see my friends doing this stuff, but I'm not interested in that because that's not who I am,
Mhm,
which is a tough place to get kids to, I think. But it's just that consistency. It's us showing up. It's us demonstrating this is who we are. This is people like us do things like this. And when they see it in us, they hear it from us, they watch it being modeled, and I think they see the benefit of it for in our lives because we choose to be that way, right? That
mhm,
we don't have to navigate some of this stuff because we have the same pressures they do, and to conform to some of this stuff or to fall into some of these traps. And we kind of think about, oh, kids are so susceptible to that. Man, I know people my age who are having the same problems. You probably do too, right? Who
sure,
get you know pressured by social media to do certain things or be a certain way or to live a
yeah,
certain lifestyle, and we act like we're above it, but we're really not, right? Because we're not always as confident in ourselves as we could be as well.
Absolutely. Hey, Jay, thank you so much for everything you
Yeah.
shared. This has been fantastic, and you gave a ton of insight, and I think there's plenty more inside the book for everybody. And looking forward to your next release. So when that one's going to be coming out or whatever. Like, do you have a plan for that one? Is that like
So
next year? Or?
the problem with this one is that there's not the same ticking clock that I had on this one. I
Gotcha.
honestly I want to have it written before my daughter starts college, and she starts college in August. So
Okay, yeah. So
there's the
you do
clock.
have a little bit of a clock there.
That's
Yeah.
it. It's a little bit more amorphous than a due date. But the goal is for the second book, which will be God Help Me, I'm a College Student, will come out this summer.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. I'm just gonna end the recording so that we were all squared away. So,
Perfect.
thanks again, and we'll do this again soon, I hope.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Shawn.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Sippin' with Shawn. Make sure you hit the like button below, and you also subscribe to the channel so that way you get more notifications so you can see all the other content that we're putting out on a regular basis here on the Till Death Podcast Network. And also make sure you go and check out solo.to/imshawncav, because that's going to have where all my socials are. You can go and you can follow me there and keep up to date with everything that I'm doing on a regular basis. So take care, and I'll see you in the next video.